गुड मॉर्निंग फ्रेंड्स। मैं हूं आपका दोस्त मदन सिंह and I'm going to talk to you today about the sensational crash which has taken place in Dubai during the air show there. You must be wondering where I've gone for the last 1 week. Well, I was out on some official work and been to Central Asia, and I've come back, and I'm going to talk about the very nefarious, I would say, a very bad blow to the Indian aviation with the aircraft just blowing off, hitting the ground during an air show in Dubai. Now, this show is held every alternate year, and all the countries of the world come and take part in this air show. The idea is to showcase your equipment, and Indian Air Force also wanted to show its equipment and the proficiency of the pilots, and so they had sent across a team, and one of the members of the team was Wing Commander Siyal. Now, I understand he's a wonderful pilot and he's a very brave man, but sometimes fate is not with you. On this fateful day, what I've been observing this entire episode from afar and the various videos which have come out, it shows that there's very little chance of sabotage. I don't think there was any sabotage. Sabotage तो नहीं हुआ. तो फिर क्या हुआ? What really happened was that this pilot had gone into a loop. Now, loop is one of the maneuvers which we do during an air show. As you are all aware, I have spent a lot of years in the Air Force, so I'm very conversant with what all is going on. Now, this loop is a dangerous proposition if it is done close to the ground. And anyway, I think Wing Commander Siyal was very confident that he would be able to do it. So he went into a loop, and there are two options what probably happened. The first is that the engine, while pulling up at the end of the loop, failed to gather power, यानी उनमें पावर नहीं आई engine में, and it couldn't take up and it crashed into the ground. But there is another chance also, and that is that at that critical moment when forces of 7G, 8G, and 9G, negative G forces are working on the pilot, there's a good chance that he could have passed out for a minute or two, or maybe a few seconds, and during that period, the plane hit the ground. Whatever it is, it's a very sad story as far as India is concerned and a big blow to Indian aviation. But we must bear in mind that it is not the fault of the Air Force or the pilots alone. HAL has been developing this plane since 1984, and in 41 years they couldn't develop a plane which is 100% Indian. Even the present plane, it has got only 60% indigenous parts, यानी सिर्फ 60% इंडियन पार्ट्स हैं. एंड सबसे बड़ा चीज़ ये है कि जो इंजन है विच इज नॉट मेड इन इंडिया, ये अमेरिका से इम्पोर्टेड है. इट्स ए GE engine and it costs $1 million. The Air Force has placed an order for 113 of these engines. Now these engines have to be fitted into the plane. बहुत लोगों ने मेरे से पूछा, भाई जहाज तो आपने बना लिया, कैप्टन कैन यू टेल अस व्हाई इंडिया डिडंट मेक द इंजन. बड़ा दुरुस्त क्वेश्चन है, बट क्वेश्चन ये है, आंसर उसका ये है कि ये जो इंजन होता है इट्स ए वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स मैकेनिज्म, और हमारे पास ये टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है. दिस इंजन हैज़ hundreds and thousands of moving parts. Some of them are in the shape of a aircraft's wing, and these move at various speeds that generate momentum and power for the engine once the air is sucked into the engine and it blows out. It's a jet engine, in other words. So, gentlemen, ये जो engine है बहुत complex है, and if India starts trying to make one now, it will take 25 years. हमारी टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है, and this thing should have been done 60 years back. एक सेकेंड पॉइंट ये भी आपको मैं रिमाइंड करता हूँ कि इंडिया में रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग की टेक्नोलॉजी भी नहीं है. अदरवाइज इंडिया लाइक चाइना कुड हैव डुप्लीकेटेड द MiG-21 और द 23 जो इंडिया में बन रहे थे, एंड उनको देख के अपना जहाज बना सकते थे. रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग क्या चीज़ है? व्हाट इज रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग? रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग मीन्स you strip down the plane bolt by bolt, part by part, और फिर उनको देख के अपना पार्ट बनाना एंड मेक योर ओन प्लेन. एंड जो चाइनीज हैं दे आर वेरी adept in this particular टेक्नोलॉजी. और उन्होंने जितने भी रशियन जहाज जो उन्होंने खरीदे थे, जैसे सुखाई है, जो मिग है, दे डिड रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग एंड प्रोड्यूस देयर ओन मॉडल्स. ये मॉडल उतने अच्छे नहीं है जितने रशियन प्लेन के हैं, बट दे आर स्टिल वेरी गुड. अनफॉर्चुनेटली इंडिया डिड नॉट हैव दिस टेक्नोलॉजी ऑल्सो. एंड हम आधा इंजन बनाते थे, आज आधा आधा एयरक्राफ्ट बनाया, आधा नहीं बनाया, विच हैज रियली गॉट नो रेलिवेंस. और ये जो प्लेन है 41 ईयर्स के लिए चल रहा है, एंड इसकी लास्ट आई थिंक फ्लाइट, जो पहली फ्लाइट हुई थी, वॉज इन 2001 और समथिंग. सो 24 years have elapsed and two crashes have taken place. पर इतने ज़्यादा प्लेन भी नहीं आए, बिकॉज इंजन नहीं थे तो जहाज भी नहीं बन रहा था. एंड द Americans for about 2 years in between stopped giving the engine for God knows what reason. Yani the key was with the Americans. And the Americans were very keen to sell their F-35 to India, and the Russians were keen to sell you the Su-57. Now ये दोनों फिफ्थ जनरेशन फाइटर्स हैं. चाइना के पास भी एक फिफ्थ जनरेशन फाइटर है, बट इंडियाज फिफ्थ जनरेशन फाइटर विल ओनली कम इन 2036. सो ये मैं आपको बैकग्राउंड बता रहा हूँ ऑन दी plane which crashed recently. That is one of the Mac. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद हो, प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब टू माई चैनल, बिकम माई सब्सक्राइबर, शेयर इट एंड कमेंट ऑल्सो. और फिर आगे बढ़ते हैं, और आई विल टेल यू सम मोर थिंग्स, बिकॉज इंडियन एविएशन इंडस्ट्री जो है इज़ एक्चुअली नॉट ऑन द हाइएस्ट ब्रैकेट. दैट इज़ वाई वी आर लैगिंग बिहाइंड. एंड ये बात आपको सोचनी पड़ेगी कि चाइना और इंडिया दोनों एक ही लेवल पे थे इन 1949. बट वेयर इज चाइना नाउ? दे हैव अ फ्लीट ऑफ aircraft which they are making, and India cannot even make one. It's a very sad occurrence, and whatever you have made gives a bad name. I can tell you the main responsibility for this is with the HAL, and हमारे चीफ ने भी काफ़ी अपना anguish, he was very anguished when he said कि we've been asking for the planes from HAL, but they are not supplying us. And so perforce the Air Force had to continue to use the MiG-21. That is also a fact. हालांकि MiG-21 जो था, it had been made obsolete 25 years back, but still the Indians had to use it. There was no choice. And tens of aircraft crashed. उनकी भी court of inquiries हुई हैं. Like there will be a court of inquiry for this crash also. But I do not know what result comes out of those courts of inquiries. Everybody knows the problem. I think मेरी ओपिनियन है कि इस जहाज को इस वक्त ये एयर शो में एयर एरोबेटिक्स के लिए नहीं भेजना था, because it is still an untried and untested commodity, and it will take time for it to mature. So unfortunately this didn't happen, and everybody okayed the plane to go, and now we have this very sad spectacle of losing one of our ablest fighter pilots. ये कोई अच्छी खबर नहीं है, and I'm afraid Pakistan has also not covered itself with glory by celebrating the crash of the Indian plane. मेरे ख्याल में बहुत ही जल्लाद टाइप के आदमी होते हैं जो सेलिब्रेट करेंगे a death of a warrior. You see, the wing commander Siyal was a warrior, and his death is to be not celebrated, but feel sorry and hope that he goes to Valhalla, Halala, the land of the gods. Well, gentlemen, ये क्रैश तो हो गया, पर आगे क्या होने वाला है? आगे ये है कि इंडियन एयरक्राफ्ट इंडस्ट्री इज गोइंग टू गो बैक बाय अनदर डिकेड, एंड प्रोबेबली नाउ HAL will again examine क्या हो गया है, and the court of inquiry will pinpoint the faults. हो सकता है इसमें पायलट एरर भी आ जाए. In that case, the culpability would be with the squadron commander and the Air Force, which authorized these maneuvers which were not required to be done. And I'm very happy that the American team, which had come for the air show, immediately suspended their activities because they felt a warrior has been died and we must pay honor to his memory. Unfortunately, the Pakistanis and others continued. Gentlemen, the aircraft industry in India is I think, despite being in action for 75 years, is still not taken off. And until you make your own engines, it's got no relevance really. Why waste millions and millions of dollars in making airframes and not making the engine? Because without the engine, which is the heart of the plane, it can't fly. And even if you buy the planes from America, the F-35, which is the best fighter in the world, पर उसका क्या यूज है अगर चाबी अमेरिकन के पास ही रहेगी and India will have to be dependent on China, sorry, on America for everything. The Russian plane is not on the same level as the American plane, and taking that, I wouldn't say it's a very great deal at all because Russia is no longer a global power and won't be able to back India. Gentlemen, ये plane जो है, unfortunately, I think there was some reservations about it from the earlier Air Force chiefs that they were not very keen for this plane. But then modifications were made by HAL and ये जहाज Air Force को बोला भाई यहाँ तो निर्भर की बात है, you please take it, and they took it. There was no choice. Gentlemen, there's so many things where the air chief should have put his foot down, which he didn't, unfortunately, at many places. We can discuss that sometime later. And one of these that he could have put his foot down on the MiG and say, well, it's high time the MiG is stopped, but they continued using it for another 25 years. So, gentlemen, there are a lot of things which are happening here in India which I am not really very happy about. And this crash of this plane has really saddened me very much that a brave pilot like Siyal has to go from this world. I do not know what was in his mind because it must be a split section, second action and death. Now, gentlemen, I think this show also should have been called off once this pilot had taken place. That's what the American team also said. But the organizers decided to go on with it. So, anyway, goodbye.